Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
Look at the roadways. It's a disaster. Snow and the West Coast, we don't know what to do.
With another winter storm coming, Metro Vancouver transit users brace for more trouble. Also,
I am not a baby killer.
Investigating the conduct of BC prosecutors in a decade-old child murder case. And
the cost of living here versus the cost of living in Parksville, it's not even comparable.
treading water, the 6-hour commute to navigate Metro Vancouver's affordability crisis.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening. Another winter storm is heading our way tonight. A snowfall warning just went up a short time ago for Metro Vancouver. A winter storm warning is in effect for the Valley. It could once again mean more frustration for commuters. As Eva Yugwen-Senj reports, after what happened this week, they're questioning whether TransLink is equipped to handle the winter weather.
When it came to describing transit this week, some had only one word.
It's a disaster. Snow and the West Coast, we don't know what to do.
And he's not the only one who's frustrated.
This one day, the SkyTrain station was entirely closed. So a lot of people waiting outside. Just not knowing when it's gonna be.
It's definitely been frustrating. It makes scheduling getting to places on time harder.
The Expo line was shut down twice in less than 24 hours. It started yesterday afternoon. Ice buildup on power rails near Stadium Chinatown Station shut down the line. Ice built up again right in the middle of the Friday morning commute.
These bus goes to Waterfront.
Frustrated commuters had to get off their trains at Stadium Chinatown and get onto shuttle buses towards Burrard Station.
The timing, as you say, has not been good because both of these incidents over the past few days have occurred during rush hours at the worst possible time.
Some commuters are willing to cut TransLink some slack.
They could do better, but the weather here, we know it's raining plus it's snowing. So.
And I know Vancouver isn't the best when it comes to snow, so I don't really blame them.
I had no problems with it. I thought they did as best they could.
But not this guy.
I tried to take SkyTrain this morning. It was a disaster. Tried to take SkyTrain the day of the heavy snow. Disaster.
TransLink says it understands the frustration.
Expo Line usually performs a really reliable and consistent service, and that hasn't happened. And so we're going to be taking a very hard look at that and figuring out how we can stop those issues from happening.
He says with the snow melting, service is slowly getting back to normal, and TransLink is looking into how it can prevent ice buildup in the future. Eva Yugwen-Senj, CBC News, Vancouver.
And when we get this kind of weather, it's an age-old discussion here in the city. Should you change your tires for the winter?
I have four-wheel drive on my truck and they're all season. So I'm from Ontario and I don't dare leave my driveway when there's snow without at least engaging four-wheel drive or all-wheel drive.
If you don't have winter tire, you can't drive.
I have all-season tires that are M+S certified, so that's mud and snow, I believe.
Well, we don't have snow that often, so it wouldn't be worth the investment.
Still, it is an especially hot topic now that we've endured our first couple of snowstorms of the season, where drivers were slipping, sliding, and stalling on the snow and ice-filled streets of the Lower Mainland. So, in British Columbia, winter tires are mandatory on most highways throughout the winter season. The exceptions are in most of Metro Vancouver and along the southeast coast of Vancouver Island. Some highways require winter tires from October 1st until March 31st, while others go all the way until the end of April. So how can you tell if your tires are winter road worthy? I'll take a look at the side of your tire. If you spot a snowflake, that means they are winter tires, while the M+S means mud and snow. And this is a big one. Summer tires have no symbol on them at all.
You want to check out your tire. The sidewall will always tell you what kind of tire it is. And the snowflake is the big common one. It's just the symbol. And if it's got a snowflake on it, you should be good as long as they're not worn out. Now, that's where the toonie test comes in. You stick a toonie in the deepest part of the groove, and technically it should come up to the paw of the bear.
And the instructor reminds all drivers to keep away from hard braking, acceleration, and steering. during winter driving conditions. So how is your commute to work this morning? Well, consider this in our Treading Water series. Metro Vancouver's affordability crisis has pushed some paramedics to regularly travel for hours just to get to work. As Belle Puri from CBC Vancouver's Impact Team reports, they simply can't afford to work and live in the city.
At the end of a 12-hour shift, home for Mark Creighton is a spare bedroom at a relative's place.
I would love to go home and to see my wife and everybody, but it's the price I pay to do the job.
Creighton lives in Parksville but works in Vancouver. Shift rotations mean he spends 4 days on the island and 4 days on the mainland. Depending on traffic and ferry conditions, Creighton can travel up to 6 hours at a time, but he says it's worth it.
The cost of living here versus the cost of living in Parksville, it's not even comparable.
Nearly 200 BC paramedics who work full-time in Metro Vancouver live as far away as Vancouver Island or the Okanagan.
We found housing options were pretty unaffordable for us.
Melanie Stevens is a paramedic, so is her husband. They live in Kelowna with their 3 children and know all about commuting to Vancouver for work.
Definitely affordability at the coast is a big issue. Our salaries can't keep pace with inflation and housing in Vancouver. We just have no way to do that.
A full-time primary care paramedic with 3 years' experience makes $74,000 a year. After 25 years of experience, that wage increases to $77,000.
The cost of living and the housing costs and all those things that have happened in the GVRD, if you went, or the Lower Mainland, I think that our struggles and choices have been directly proportional to that.
Another reason paramedics are forced to commute is the location of full-time jobs.
Busier centres, of course, have higher call volumes, so it stands to reason that 85% of all full-time paramedic jobs in the province are here in Metro Vancouver. And to make it work, those who commute, they live in campers, RVs, and shared apartments.
Paramedics call them haciendas.
People will rent an apartment and share it between different platoons and different shifts, and it just cuts the cost of the rent down significantly, because instead of just one person renting it, there's like 8 people renting it.
BC Emergency Health Services says provisions in the latest collective agreement with paramedics should create more full-time jobs outside of the Lower Mainland. In Courtney, Chandra Kuntz has been waiting for a job close to her husband and children for 9 years. Instead, the travel to Vancouver has taken its toll.
The commuting costs were getting to be a bit too much, so I only come home every other block now. I stay in Vancouver for 12 days, and then I come home for 3, and then I go back for 12, and then home for 3.
Outside of the box remedies, for many, are the only way to make ends meet. Belle Puri, CBC News, Vancouver.
Jo was in court today just ahead of her extradition hearing, which begins on Monday. The Huawei executive has been living under house arrest here in Vancouver for more than a year now. The week-long hearing is the first phase of her extradition process. Meng was arrested by the RCMP at the request of American prosecutors while she was in transit at Vancouver International Airport. They claim she committed fraud and her company violated sanctions against Iran. A judge will need to decide if the offense American prosecutors have accused Meng of would be prosecutable in Canada. Canada's Justice Minister has this to say.
We want Ms. Meng to have every legal protection that the Canadian legal system affords. And we think our process has done that. And we've taken the decision that this respects the rule of law, and the best way I can respect the rule of law in all of this is to let that legal process run.
And that's why Lametti says he's staying out of the political discussions around Meng. And our podcast, Sanction, tells the story of Meng Wanzhou's detention here in Vancouver. Her extradition hearing begins, as we said, on Monday. We'll stay on top of the story with new episodes of Sanctioned that are out now. Well, lawsuits, slash fires, and a horde of angry residents. Sechelt's Sandy Hook community is usually pretty quiet, but lately there's been a lot of noise over a private logging operation. Our John Hernandez visited the small neighborhood where residents have watched a sprawling forest disappear.
The hike up this hill looks a lot different than it did just a few years ago. Once a thick forest, now a sea of branches and stumps.
Now we're seeing the consequences, the wildlife loss, the fact that we don't have a buffer zone, all of those things.
These residents have lived in Sechelt's small Sandy Hook community for decades. Today, mourning the loss of a once beloved woodland.
We've lost acres of beautiful, beautiful forest. I'm furious, as is every member of this community, at having absolutely no power, no say, no clout, going to our municipal government, they can't do anything.
This land, about 70 hectares, was bought up by a numbered company back in 2014. Its primary shareholder, a Coquitlam resident named Kin Chung, who declined an interview with CBC. The district filed a lawsuit against his company after hundreds of protected trees were cut down.
Once they became a private managed forest, they were actually outside of any of our jurisdiction. We had difficulty getting information. We didn't know what was going on. The residents didn't know what was going on.
The two sides settled out of court after the protected trees were cut down, but bylaw infractions like open burning still continue.
You cannot do open burning in the district of Sechelt, and yet they have 100 piles up there that they're burning.
One was set just meters away from people's homes.
You can just imagine a 10 or 15-foot slash pile throwing up all those embers, and the southeaster blowing all those embers into their backyards and onto the tops of their houses. Was pretty scary.
Residents say hillside erosion has also led to flooding.
Community members have raised concerns about other operations, and this is just the latest to grab the attention.
MLA Nicholas Simons says there needs to be an overhaul in how private forests are managed across BC. When it comes to logging, private lots like this aren't held to the same standards as Crown land.
The standards and the oversight and the enforcement are set and basically administered outside of the purview of government, and I think that there needs to be better oversight.
Chung hasn't violated any of the current rules, but the province is reviewing its Private Land Act, which could mean tighter regulations. It would be a welcome change here, even if it won't bring back the trees.
My interest here is that we learn from what's happened.
John Hernandez, CBC News, Sechelt.
Industry officials say it is unacceptable that Western Forest Products workers have been on strike for half a year now. Yesterday, Premier John Horgan announced $5 million to support timber harvesting contractors on the coast, but some are weary of how far that money will go.
We're on day 200 of that strike, actually 201 today, and contractors need help, but what we really need is for the strike to end.
The annual Truck Loggers Association convention took place this week in Vancouver. Horgan promising contractors would be able to tap into the fund before month's end. The money will help contractors with equipment payments and the costs of restarting operations once the dispute ends. About 3,000 workers went on strike July 1st, with bargaining still at a stalemate. Well, some welcome news for White Rock residents and those who use the waterfront promenade. There will be no more whistles from trains passing through the city, a long-time annoyance to residents there. Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railway says its trains will stop sounding horns at each of the 8 promenade entrances as of the 29th of this month. Transport Canada had ordered trains to blow their horns from dawn to dusk for the safety of those using the waterfront. The horns will now only be sounded if people or animals are on the tracks. Newfoundland is being hammered tonight by one of the worst snowstorms people there have seen in years. Conditions so bad, several municipalities have declared states of emergency. Winds are picking up, reaching 160 kilometers an hour in some areas. The region is expected to get up to 75 centimeters of snow. Meteorologist Brett Soderholm is here joining us now. We've all been kind of watching the stories come out of Newfoundland. It really is remarkable compared to what we've been getting.
Well, exactly. It's hardly even a fair comparison, but as a long-term weather nerd myself, I don't think I've seen a storm quite like this, and even by Newfoundland standards, this is one for the record books. We were talking about those strong winds earlier. Bonavista, that was the place that exceeded 160 kilometers an hour, and St. John's as well, 157. You know what happened at the time of that wind gust? Well, it kind of knocked out their station, so I can't tell you how strong the winds are right now. In Bonavista, though, these are sustained winds at about 128 kilometers an hour. Imagine that. It is now going to be still going on in full force all the way through the night and into tomorrow. But there's another thing that's happening, and this doesn't happen very often. Certainly we have blizzard warnings in effect for portions of the Avalon Peninsula specifically, and then as we head farther into Canada, guess what? Every single province or territory right now has some form of watch or a warning. So be it snowfall, be it extreme cold, or even blizzards into the far north, we got it. Every single place in this country right now is experiencing some adverse weather. To zoom in on BC, we have our own blizzard warning up for Terrace, Prince Rupert into some outflow, and certainly for Vancouver Island, wind and winter storm. Here in the Lower Mainland, yet another snowfall warning for places like Langley and Surrey, and then there's going to be even some freezing rain on our highways, so be careful out there.
Okay, we'll hear more about that from you a little later. Thanks, Brett.
You're welcome.
Now, the University of British Columbia is setting up a scholarship to honor victims of Flight 752. The announcement being made at the university this evening, and that's where our Andrea Ross is. So, Andrea, what can you tell us about this Iranian student scholarship?
Well, a lecture is about to get underway behind me right now, but this is where they're also going to be announcing that scholarship fund. So this is for Iranian students, and it was made to commemorate the victims of the plane crash in Iran. 4 of those victims had ties to UBC. So UBC is going to be donating $50,000 to this scholarship, and the Iranian Canadian community is also assisting with a further $10,000. This means that one student each year will get $2,400 to help with the costs of school, and faculty members say that this is a positive step after tragic circumstances.
I'm sure that this would be really good news to the Iranian community. I mean, as someone who was a student, you know, just a few years ago, I can imagine how this could be very helpful and very encouraging to the students, and also, again, inspiring in another way, meaning that, you know, this comes by way of actually contributions towards a dear cause.
Now, 1,100 Iranian students go to UBC, and this is not the only university that has created a scholarship fund in recent days. Other universities across Canada have also created scholarships and bursaries in memory of the victims of this plane crash. Mike.
All right, Andrea, thanks very much. Andrea Ross live at UBC tonight. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau revealed compensation for families of Canadians killed on that flight. Immediate payments of $25,000 are being made. And as Ashley Burke tells us, for some families, that money is critical.
Through inconceivable loss, Masood Pourjam needs to keep working.
I feel, you know, one part of my body is gone and I'm missing it.
He's missing his brother Mansour, an Ottawa dentist with a contagious smile and the family's main provider.
Because now is a kind of fear factor that what is going to be next.
Mansour left behind a 13-year-old son as well as an 18-year-old Iranian nephew who he cared for in Ottawa. With his bank account frozen, the bills are piling up.
Soon I think probably even, I'm not sure if the utility can go on.
He's trying his best to care for them by staying on the road taking taxi fares, but it's hard to get through a shift.
I have to go home, and I try not to be alone by myself. And it is embarrassing when customer is in the car and I start crying.
Aligned with. Today, it was hearing Justin Trudeau that brought him to tears.
Sorry, I can't go.
He remains weighed down by grief. but $25,000 from the federal government will lessen his burden.
It is not the compensation that we expect will come and should come from Iran in due course, but these families need help now, and we will be getting this money to them as quickly as we possibly can in the coming days.
For the Poor Jam family, it's a lifeline.
At least that for a few weeks I can breathe a sigh of relief. That would be very helpful.
There's another immediate concern, bringing his brother's remains back to Canada. Today, Trudeau said he's encouraged that Iran is respecting families' wishes for repatriation.
I hope one day I can overcome this tragedy.
For now, he has no choice but to keep driving, keep moving forward. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
Meanwhile, in Oman, Canada's foreign minister had a rare meeting with his Iranian counterpart today to discuss the tragedy.
How are you?
Thank you for accepting my invitation.
Francois-Philippe Champagne announced the international community's demands of Iran, including the need for a transparent analysis of the black box data to which Iran has agreed. They committed to continue discussions. And just a reminder, you can watch this newscast live on CBC Gem. The free app is also where you can find other CBC programs. And CBC Vancouver is also on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. They spread fear and misinformation about vaccines. Coming up, our hidden cameras uncover who's leading the anti-vax movement and expose some of their scare tactics. And thanks for staying with us online during the commercial break on television. Well, 17 years after Hollywood gave us the second installment of the action movie Bad Boys, it's now delivered a third. The main characters, played by Martin Lawrence and Will Smith, are a little different, but is the magic the same? CBC film critic Eli Glasner has the answer for us.
Here we are, back again with Officer Mike Lowry and Marcus Burnett. It's been nearly 25 years since we first buckled up with the Bad Boys. Going from this...
And boys will be boys.
...to this.
Hey! Oh. Oh. Come on, man!
As the new film about the older boys to men begins, the only thing Mike and Marcus are chasing is time.
Daddy! You a papa.
With Marcus becoming a granddad, he's ready to pack it in. But Mike is still Mike, as the captain knows all too well.
Look at this mess, it's carnage.
I didn't do all this.
You didn't shoot anybody?
Well, come on, Cap, you know I shot some people.
Yeah. But as Marcus starts to enjoy the good life, a specter from Mike's past puts a target on his back.
Marcus, somebody's trying to kill me.
But what's changed? Well, when I first realized that Martin Lawrence at the age of 54 was back, I was worried he'd be little more than a punching bag.
How deep you think you got in his soul?
And well, yeah, he is that at times. As a man of faith and family man, Marcus is a middle-aged reality check to the consequences of super cop shenanigans.
Oh, this is my wife's car. Cover the front door. She knows. She always knows.
Then there's Will Smith as Mike, unstoppable as ever, using his bravado to push away any doubts. But by tying the bad guys to his past, that makes Bad Boys 3 an origin story for the boy who became Mike. It's about a man confronting his wild youth, Gemini Man, without the annoying special effects. And there's the surprise. Bad Boys for Life may not be bigger or louder, but it's actually a little more self-aware. Just two dudes working through their issues with a little bit of collateral damage. 3.5 stars out of 5. Eli Glasner, CBC News, Toronto.
Somebody just said 3.5 stars a second ago. Wonder who that was. Anyway, it looks pretty good. We'll have to check it out. Can't go wrong with that. Okay, we've got more news coming up, including our hidden camera investigation into the anti-vax movement. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Nearly half of Canadians have some concerns when it comes to the safety of vaccines, especially for children. That's in large part due to misinformation being spread by the anti-vax movement. CBC's Marketplace is probing the inner workings of this movement to find out who's leading the charge and to expose some of the scare tactics used to convince uneasy parents. Aisha Tomlinson reports.
We're at a massive anti-vax rally in Washington.
This is a war for our children.
With some of the biggest leaders.
Why would we trust them?
Andrew Wakefield. His bogus study in the 90s famously linked vaccines to autism. And Del Bigtree, a controversial filmmaker, speaker, and host.
So if you're telling your clients vaccine injuries don't happen, you are a moron.
The movement goes far beyond this rally. It's a massive misinformation campaign online, contributing to a culture of vaccine hesitancy, now a global health crisis. Nearly half of Canadians have concerns about vaccine safety.
People around the world have stopped vaccinating because of the rhetoric that they've read online. Outbreaks of measles are occurring and people are actually dying. The risks of vaccination are actually very small. 1 in a million may get a severe anaphylactic or severe allergic reaction to the vaccine, but even that is treatable.
Rolling. We want to understand the tactics used to get people on side. That's why we're undercover at this VIP anti-vax event. People are quick to share their opinions.
Canadians are so apathetic. We need to be more willing to engage. That's what we're trying in a more radical way.
And others reveal social media strategies to avoid being flagged on sites like Facebook.
Like, we need to not put vaccine even in the name whatsoever. You can't search our name and it won't come up.
At the end of the event, we catch up with Del Bigtree. There are multiple studies with hundreds of thousands of subjects. That there was one in 2016 and one in 2019.
That said what?
Hundreds of thousands of subjects that said there's no link between the MMR vaccine and autism. Are they untrue?
It's bad science. That's what I would say. Don't do anything you're not sure about.
Don't do anything. A common anti-vax tactic and one of the most powerful.
We have to be able to remind people what vaccines are, why they're important, and how safe they are.
Dr. Dubé says that's why facts matter. Aisha Tomlinson, CBC News, Toronto.
And you can watch the full Marketplace investigation on CBC television or stream anytime on CBC Gem. Well, hockey fans watching the Winnipeg Jets game tonight saw and heard something that's never been done before at the NHL event level. As Cameron McIntosh tells us, it doesn't get much more Canadian than this.
16,000 people here? You're going to be seen across the country? Right?
No pressure there, especially if you're only 10.
1, 2, 3.
For this small choir from Winnipeg's Riverbend Community School, it's not just the size of the audience that's special.
Oh, Canada, oh, my Kina.
It's the song, O Canada, in Ojibwe. According to the Winnipeg Jets, a first for a National Hockey League game and a first in North American pro sports.
I'm really excited.
Why?
Because I really wanted to be a part of Ojibwe.
What's your favorite part about singing?
That I get to sing for other people.
A big platform for a language undergoing a revival, especially in Manitoba.
For far too long, too many generations, we haven't had the opportunity to share the gifts and the beauty of our Indigenous culture.
Nice! Kevin Chief is a community liaison working with the Jets to build ties with the Indigenous community, from getting kids playing to supports for education and mental health programming.
You can't talk about the history of Canada or Manitoba without talking about the unique relationship with Indigenous people.
Tonight's game, a fully Indigenous-led display of culture, right down to the warm-up jersey.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome from Swan Lake First Nation.
And for the girls, the weight of a Winnipeg tradition.
It's come from both Indigenous and non-Indigenous people. Will the fans know when to yell True North?
Only one way to find out. sung in their own voice, in their own words. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Did they withhold evidence from a Cranbrook babysitter's defense lawyer? Investigating the conduct of BC prosecutors in a decade-old child murder case. Quick look at some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
I tried to take SkyTrain this morning. It was a disaster. Tried to take SkyTrain the day of the heavy snow. Disaster.
More frustration for Metro Vancouver commuters, and with another messy winter storm expected tonight, there could be more delays and service disruption on SkyTrain and on buses. Also, an investigation by CBC's The Fifth Estate has prompted the BC government to look into the 2010 conviction of a Cranbrook babysitter to ensure there was no miscarriage of justice. Tammy Bouvette was charged with second-degree murder after a baby drowned in a bathtub.
Yeah, it's sad. I would love to go home and to see my wife and everybody, but it's the price I pay to do the job.
The 6-hour commute, our series Treading Water, shows how Metro Vancouver's affordability crisis is pushing more professionals to homes on the island and the Okanagan. An investigation by CBC's The Fifth Estate has prompted the BC government to look into the 2010 conviction of a Cranbrook woman to ensure there was no miscarriage of justice. The woman was babysitting a child who drowned in a bathtub. That babysitter, Tammy Bouvette, was charged with second-degree murder. But as Mark Kelly reports tonight, her defense was never shown evidence that could have exonerated her.
It was May 2011. Little Ayanna Teeple was getting a bath when her babysitter left to clean up a spill in another room. Tragedy struck quickly.
There was a 911 call to a residence here in town, in Cranbrook. The call was for possible drowning of a 19-month-old girl.
The child was airlifted to a Calgary hospital where she died. No charges were laid until an autopsy from Dr. Evan Matchis. He detected extensive bruising on the baby, which he said was typical of abused children.
Tammy Bouvette is charged with second-degree murder in the death of a 19-month-old baby girl.
Being charged with second-degree murder is not right. I love that little girl like my own.
Bouvette, the babysitter, pled guilty to criminal negligence and spent 2 years in jail. What she didn't know was in 2012, the autopsy in her case was reviewed by a panel of experts appointed by Alberta Justice. The 3 pathologists saw no sign of abuse on the child. That report was never shared with her lawyer, Jesse Gelber.
So manner of death, not reasonable. Cause of death, not reasonable. Other opinions, not reasonable. Yeah, well, that was my gut feeling when I got the file.
She wasn't a murderer.
No, she's just a really sweet person, actually.
Alberta Justice reviewed 14 cases handled by Dr. Matchis, but when he challenged the review in court, it was struck down. Alberta Justice then promised a second review. It never happened. Meanwhile, Tammy Bouvette's life went into a free fall. She lost custody of her 4 children. We found her living on the streets outside of Vancouver.
A terrible thing happened, and I wish I could have changed it. And I got put in a category which I'm not.
What category is that?
I am not a baby killer.
Alberta Justice told the Fifth Estate it shared the expert review of Tammy's case with BC's Crown Service. But like her lawyer, Tammy says this is the first she's heard of it.
Shame on them for not, doing their job right.
After we contacted the BC government to ask why Tammy Bouvette and her lawyer were not given this information, BC's Attorney General appointed the special prosecutor. She'll investigate the conduct of the province's Crown Prosecution Service to determine whether this was indeed a miscarriage of justice. Mark Kelly, CBC News, Toronto.
And you can see Mark's full story on the Fifth Estate Sunday night. What did justice cover up? Airs at 9 p.m. on CBC and online on CBC Gem. At 6:37, a look at downtown Vancouver tonight. The harbor there. Call it the calm before the next winter storm. When the latest blast of snow is expected to hit the south coast. Next.
The weather update is brought to you by The Body Shop that always takes you back to your happy place. BC's favorite, Craftsman Collision, Air Miles, and Bigger Smiles.
Brett is back. Here we go again.
One more time, because if you didn't get enough this week, you get one more chance tonight. But really, this will, and I can say this confidently, this will be about the last that we're going to have to deal with for a while. And I think a lot of us are going to be sleeping tonight when the worst is happening. So tomorrow's a great day. Just sleep in, let the rain do its work, and don't worry too much about the snow. But I'll give you all those details right now. Let's take a look back at our time lapse from this morning. Pretty active one, I would say. Lots of things going on. We had some clear skies, which were really quite nice. We had some localized clouds that seemed to be giving some heavy downbursts of rain or snow, or maybe both at the same time. And then we saw more clouds as the day went on, but you'll notice too the temperatures were not nearly as cold as they have been. We are getting into yet another classic setup for another winter storm that is going to be affecting all of BC. It's not just the south coast, but primarily for the next few hours, what we're going to start to see is snow really piling up for portions of eastern Vancouver Island. Anywhere from Nanaimo to Campbell River could be getting 20 centimeters of snow. Here in Vancouver, we're going to be getting probably another 2 to 5 centimeters or so, and into the Fraser Valley, that could reach 10. But the trade-off here is that come Saturday morning, we're going to start to go into these warmer temperatures, and that means we can expect a transition through freezing rain, a rain-snow mix, and then finally, just rain. And by the time that we get into Sunday, it'll actually just be a rain story. Now, here's a map you probably haven't seen in quite some time, because when was the last time we talked about rain here in Vancouver? It's been over a week. Parts of the metro region largely getting 20 to 40 millimeters, though, of course, sea-to-sky territory is going to be a little bit heavier than that. We could exceed about 50 millimeters or so. And in terms of a provincial look, I don't want to leave out our friends across the parts of the central interior, because there's going to still be some snow coming, not only tonight, but into tomorrow afternoon, and that's going to be making for some tricky travel across our mountain passes, getting into Kelowna and Kamloops. And far to the north, same thing. Prince George and places into the Peace likely still dealing with a bit of snow, while Haida Gwaii finally gets finished with their snow, but it changes over into rain. So we know it's been a busy week. It's been a long time. We've been through some wintry weather here, and you can now take a nice look at some of these mild temperatures. Notice no minus signs in front of any of these numbers. That means we are looking at a steady, increasing warming trend. So just a few words of advice for Saturday. First thing in the morning, still going to be starting off with the rain-snow mix, but by the afternoon, likely changing over to all rain, and that will become our trend for the next foreseeable future. And to add my own opinion to this, I think this might be the first time I'm happy to see such a rainy forecast into the long future. This is nice.
Just the way most of us like it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, glad to provide what I can.
Yes. But really messy back in Newfoundland.
Oh my gosh, could you imagine commuting in that?
No.
I used to live just outside of Toronto, and one of my commutes, I was supposed to drive 20 kilometers. That would take me on average about 15 minutes. One day it took me an hour and 45 minutes to travel.
That's pretty long commute.
Par for the course. Do you have any crazy
maybe a couple of typhoons when we lived in
Hong
Kong?
That would certainly do it.
But this stuff?
Yeah, man, it just certainly doesn't even compare. And no matter how bad we thought that our snowfall was, it doesn't even come close to what people in Newfoundland are dealing with tonight, our colleagues specifically. Yeah, this is what CBC Newfoundland TV news anchor Anthony Germain faced as he snowshoed home tonight after a long week at work.
Yes, a lot of people concerned about his whereabouts. At one point, Germain tweeted he wasn't sure whether to stop, slow down, or turn back. Thankfully, he made it home in one piece, even with a broken snowshoe. Said it may be time for a beverage, yes, and a Scrabble game.
Yeah.
All by the nice fire there, for sure.
That's impressive.
Well, in Newfoundland, the thing everyone there seems to be saying today, they have never seen anything quite like this.
No, and as Chris O'Neill Yates shows us, even though most people were told to stay home, some were ordered to get out now.
Even for a place that's well used to tough winters, this storm is hitting hard. By midday, high winds, blowing snow, and zero visibility made streets impassable.
I can't see anything. I can't see across the street. Both of my cars are completely snowed in at this point. There's nothing out there except winded snow, and it's kind of scary.
This was the scene at a home in the Battery region of St. John's tonight, an avalanche. The city is evacuating the area over fears of more. The snow started overnight. By morning, Shelley Bowen was still able to take her dogs out.
Boy, if this is the start of it, I don't know how we're going to navigate in a few hours. Pretty brutal.
Brutal is the word. Not long after, St. John's declared a state of emergency, the first time since 1984. The city even took plows off the road, except to provide emergency escorts. Hospitals are open, but the largest one told staff not to come in tonight, and no one in to leave. This cab company pulled its entire fleet off the roads for the first time in its history. That's exactly what people are being advised to do: stay home and off the roads. Social media was flooded with pictures like this, but officials warn letting snow pile up could be dangerous. It's so bad, Ottawa has offered help.
The Prime Minister, I know, has reached out today, so as the local MPs and the local minister here. So everybody's engaged in this, want to work with their communities.
This is nowhere near over yet, and just a sign of how bad this is, I'm just standing steps outside the door. We can't get any farther than this, so we're sleeping here tonight. And when this is all over, another huge challenge for people in this part of the province: digging out. Chris O'Neill-Yates, CBC News, St. John's.
I mean,
a lot of digging out.
That is going to be a long time coming for many, many days. Now, I mean, covering those storms like the one that's hitting in Newfoundland, that can't be easy for anyone in particular, and even a reporter.
Yeah, unless you're a kid who's got a snow day, a day off school.
Hi, I'm Pam Broom with CBC News, and there's going to be 38 centimeters of snow. As you can see here, we have a raging blizzard.
That's pretty good. They did their best impressions of a CBC reporter covering the blizzard. Of course, they're doing their coverage from inside. All firefighters in Napanee, Ontario have invented a new solution they say can extinguish wildfires without toxic side effects. We'll show you how it works next. Badly needed rain has finally come to Australia as that country continues to battle massive wildfires. So much rain that in some places it's creating a whole new set of problems. Flash floods tore through this reptile park north of Sydney, sending staff scrambling to move animals to safety and keep crocodiles secured in their enclosures. Landslides and flooding, major concerns, and severe weather warnings have been issued for many parts of the country, including the capital of Canberra, where hail pelted houses and cars. The storms are expected to continue throughout the weekend. And it's clear from Australia's ongoing experience, fires can be destructive, but so can the materials used to fight them. As Julie Ireton reports, some Ontario firefighters have come up with a solution that extinguishes flames without contaminating soil or groundwater.
This 2017 fire outside Smiths Falls was intense and frightening. But the lingering effect of this blaze was the contamination of the well water in the surrounding neighborhood. Chemicals found in toxic firefighting foam was found coming out of the taps of nearby homes.
Hotworks, we finally got the final packaging.
This team in Napanee wanted a non-toxic alternative to the kinds of foams commonly sprayed on residential and wildfires. Quincy Emons has been a volunteer firefighter for more than 20 years.
We started learning more about what was in the foams. We found out that a lot were toxic. We felt that we could do better, and that's what we started FireRain.
These firefighters have created a patented gel made of canola oil, cornstarch, and other food-grade ingredients.
We wanted to make a product that was safe enough to eat. And we believe that not only does the product address the performance limitations of existing firefighting products, but also it addresses the environmental concerns of those products as well.
The creators say their tests show that mixed with water, the gel can put out fires faster and with less water. They've also created a spray to prevent fires during small construction or plumbing projects around the home. Municipal fire departments in the Napanee, Kingston, and Peterborough areas are now using the eco-gel at calls.
We had a tractor trailer fire with new cars on it. They were able to stop that from spreading down the trailer into the newer cars, and we had a garage fire that we knocked down relatively quick using the eco-gel.
FireRain wishes its invention could help crews down under as bushfires burn in Australia.
It's terrible. As a wildland firefighter, I've seen some big fires, but nothing to that scale or magnitude. We've had people reach out to us over the last few weeks about, how can we help, what can we do to help?
They're now talking to potential partners in Australia about licensing their products there. But before it's used on wildfires in Canada or abroad, the gel needs certification from the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
It does seem a little strange that we have to go to the United States to certify our product to have it dropped on Canadian soil, but looking at the efforts that are happening internationally, you do need to have products that are plug and play with international jurisdictions.
Studies conducted by the University of Guelph and St. Lawrence College back up the company's claims when it comes to its safety and effectiveness. The company also hopes Ontario's Ministry of Natural Resources will use their new invention during the next wildfire season. Julie Ireton, CBC News, Ottawa.
Well, at her age, most of us would probably be taking it easy, but just days before her 100th birthday, the BC senior is still practicing law. We're going to meet you. We're going to have you meet her, the province's oldest lawyer, next.
Monday on the Early Edition, more than a year after her arrest at YVR, the extradition hearing for Huawei CFO Meng Wanzhou begins in a Vancouver courtroom. We'll talk with CBC reporter Jason Proctor, who's been covering the story since day one.
And Tina Lovegreen is here with us now, hosting the 11 o'clock tonight for Mr. Dan Burt. So what are you guys working on?
Well, we're keeping an eye on the snowfall warning that's in effect for Metro Vancouver. Heavy snow is expected tonight, up to 10 centimeters tonight and going into tomorrow. And we'll also have more on that UBC scholarship that's being put in place to honor the victims of Flight 752.
All right, all of that coming at 11 o'clock. Right now over to Victoria, where lawyer Constance Isherwood is turning 100 on Sunday, but that doesn't mean this soon-to-be centenarian is retiring from her law practice anytime soon. Her son on a laptop, Constance Isherwood sitting across from him on her trusty typewriter. Remember those? Yeah, after nearly 7 decades as a lawyer, Isherwood says she can't get things done without a computer or pesky smartphone.
In the 1940s, a young Isherwood working as a secretary at a law firm headed off to law school. It's where she met her late husband, and in a few years, they set up a law practice together in Victoria. The Holmes on the sign is her maiden name.
No two clients are alike. Some are very happy, some are very sad, some are very angry, some are ready to sue somebody.
She's mostly focused on estate and family law, and she finds the work fascinating. Many families have stuck with Isherwood throughout generations, and she says she's just never found the time to retire.
Family says it's a mystery how this woman born in 1920 still works every afternoon, 5 days a week, with no signs of slowing down. While she still enjoys music in her spare time, Isherwood says she also finds purpose and friendship through her work. Wow. That's pretty cool. Pretty impressive. And happy birthday, Constance. 100 on Sunday.
That's big. It's a big number.
It is big. Thanks for watching tonight. As we said, Tina's back here at 11 right after the National. And have a fantastic weekend. Watch out for that storm coming in tonight.
Have a good night.